quick video, just a lunchtime video. Started to bring in a few more of these. Charles Martin will be given up to a year before having to face his IBF mandatory. The IBF president was interviewed today. It's been reported on Boxing Scene that they're going to give Charles Martin a year, and they've said they're going to let him enjoy his belt. Now, that's interesting. I've looked at the IBF ratings, and to be honest, it's kind of hard to see at this point who his mandatory challenger would be. I know those ratings will likely be updated, and I think the president said that they'll be updated at some point next week perhaps. But you've got names like, obviously, Glasgow Martin at the top, then you've got Erkan Tepe. The highest rated contender actually seems to be Anthony Joshua at number 5. So it's not impossible that Anthony Joshua could actually make his way into some sort of mandatory type position. I believe Robert Helenius has a big shout of moving up the ranks as well after his European title win over Franz Rill. So it wouldn't surprise me if it's one of those two guys who eventually ends up getting the mandatory shot. But seemingly Charles Martin won't have to take that fight until next January. Now, don't get me wrong, the fight could go ahead. The fight could get made sooner than that, but Martin doesn't have to. So this opens up the door to Martin either having unification matches, most likely with Deontay Wilder, or also to looking at voluntary options. And if you were Charles Martin and his camp, potentially you would be inclined to go down the voluntary route, because it would be, you've got a fighter who hasn't fought many top-level opponents. It would be a good learning experience for him to fight these kind of guys and to get the rounds against them. At the same time, you could say, if Charles Martin is, not the most proven boxer, perhaps he needs to take his money whilst he can. And at this point, the money is definitely there for him. The money to fight an Anthony Joshua for a world title, pay-per-view in the UK, the money to fight Deontay Wilder in a unification matchup. Perhaps he can't risk fighting a low-reward mandatory, and he's got to kind of cash out at this point, or at least try and maximise his revenue in 2016. So it'll be very, very interesting to see what he does. Voluntaries, mandatories, unifications, all are possibilities. If you're someone who's bet on Anthony Joshua to be world champion by the end of 2016, and I've discussed that bet several times on my channel because it's one that a lot of the UK bookmakers are offering, this is potentially relevant because presumably the IBF route is the route that Anthony Joshua will go down in terms of winning a world championship. Now, if Martin doesn't want to fight Joshua, and I appreciate the money will be there for it, but if he'd rather fight Wilder, or if he'd rather take 1 or 2 learning fights, he now doesn't have to fight Joshua until 2017. So potentially that's one that will affect that play. Regardless, let me know your thoughts on this. The IBF, usually known as the organisation that are most forward in terms of pushing their mandatories. So for me, this was a bit of a surprise. Seems very strange given how they enforced the mandatory on Tyson Fury, who had, maybe a week after his winning the belt, and now they've decided to let Charles Martin enjoy the belt and give him a year. Does seem like unequal treatment. How does this affect the division? What fights do you expect to be made? Let me know your thoughts. If this is news to you, give me a thumbs up, I'd appreciate it. Thanks for watching.